And we're live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey. This is the late show. I'm your host, Carrie. With me tonight, Mr. Mark Zaschke. He's the creator of Crypto Reality. You can find him on YouTube and on Patreon at Crypto Reality. How you doing, man?
Good, man. What's going on, Carrie? How are you?
Glad to be here. Feeling much better than I have all week with the flu or
that's good
whatever I had. I don't know what I had.
Yeah, you sounded terrible last time I talked to you. It's good to see you better.
I don't sound great now, and I appreciate that. But Brad apologizes profusely that he can't be here. He's just bad sinus headache, and his foot is just it's hurting him. So he's just not in the mood for it, and we understand perfectly. Real quick before we introduce our guest, shout out to Lindsay Bay, Jack Melton, and Peter Frampton for PayPal donations. We appreciate you guys very much, and we're very grateful for all the super stickers and super chats and stuff that you guys send here. Of course, you guys know that YouTube gets their piece of that when you put it on here, but we appreciate y'all very much for all the help. It really does mean a lot. But our guests, Pam and Paul, coming to us all the way from Arkansas. It's so good to see you guys again.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you guys too.
Awesome. How you guys doing?
They're good.
Doing
They're
good.
That's good to hear. It was great being up there. It was great.
We're glad to have you guys.
And
So-
both of you were very amazing. We thank you.
Oh
both.
well,
Thank you very much.
we can't hear that enough. That's what I was gonna ask you was, what did you think about the experience, us being there filming and getting to see how we work and the way we do these things? What was your take on all that?
Well, Mark was as soon as you got there, Mark was in the woods. He was gone.
Yeah, he was all over that place.
But it was really, really neat. I enjoyed it.
Mhm. And I thought everything was very respectful and professional. You guys were just,
Cool.
to me, just awesome. You couldn't get any better than what y'all done. So
Wow. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah.
Thank you
may
very
may
much.
not think that if we come back. So we'll take that. We'll take that for now, for sure. I know we had, but y'all were right there with us every night that we
Mhm.
stayed out there.
Yeah.
And I know that last night, I know I hit the wall. I was completely and totally drained. And about 11:30, we were out there in the power line.
Right.
But so I mean, y'all were right there with us the whole time.
mhm.
Do you want to talk a little bit about some things that have happened? We'll get into the stuff that we experienced there with you guys, but talk a little bit about some things that have happened since we left.
Well, the next day after you guys left, when you have a swimming pool, I don't know how it is in the city, but when you live in the country and you got trees around, bugs, I have to get in there every day to clean it. And so I got in there. It was the next day, and over there where that tree had fell, I heard crack, crack, crack. And I hollered at Paul. I was just like, oh my God, really? And, that was the first day after y'all. I wrote everything down. I don't know. Actually, on the July the 31st, Paul had drove over to the guy who we bought the property from and was going to mow his field for him. And so I was at the house. I was sitting up front watching the deer. I had fed the deer. And sat back down. I kept smelling this it was kind of smelled like cow manure and garbage. And I heard back there about where we had the tiki torches that night. It sounded like something lifted up that metal that he has stacked up back there, lifted it up and kind of dropped it. So, I was kind of like, what in the world? And then I heard another sound. It's a metal sound. It was kind of behind the house. Anyways, I was sitting there watching the deer, and I just looked over to my left real quick, and I saw another one. It was gray colored. And as soon as I seen it, it just shoot right behind the bushes. And So I built up the nerve to walk towards, I got to about the end of my car. I couldn't never see anything. And then when he got back, it was getting close to dark, and I told him, and he went over there and he found a footprint. So he said it was.
It was pretty deep in the ground, in the leaves. It was actually in the leaves. Probably it was pressed down 1.25 1.5 inches deep, I'd say. And where I walked around, I was just you could barely see where I stepped, you know.
Is that the one you were trying to say was my track?
And that's what I told Pam. I said, I don't know, because I know you and I were over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know, it could have been curious, but, you know, it was deep into the ground. And I know we couldn't leave any tracks.
Yeah.
You know.
Well,
No, we never left any. We tried.
No, and
We never left it. We checked our own. We looked, and we didn't
Right.
leave any.
well, and when you guys was there, you know, it was super dry, and we had about 4 inches of rain, and then this track was left, so there ain't no way it could have been left from anybody.
And, you know, I don't remember when you and I were over there looking at that. Do you remember if there was a kind of like a wore out path right there by that grapevine? Because it was really wore down. Really wore down. I don't know.
I remember finding several game trails, what I believed were game trails, small game, use them all the time. They're really narrow. You know, there's hardly any leaves in it, a bunch of small padded feet going
Right.
through. Maybe a deer will walk down it, and you can tell deer paths are a little bit wider. Not everything is pressed down so much. But when we found those that were neither one,
Mm-hmm.
that were just press like footsteps,
Uh-huh.
hard to see still, but you could tell there was a path there. Something heavy walked through there. And it was, to me, it's confirmation. I mean, on top of everything else that happened out there while we were there. I wanted to ask y'all, Paul, did you see the light show that we were watching the last night?
I did not.
Pam, you saw it.
Yes.
And I know Mark saw it. And I'm pretty sure we had the camera pointing that way, so I'm pretty sure we got it on film. It was in night vision, so it's probably just going to look like a white light, but it was blue. Am I wrong?
No.
When I saw it, it was a real bright, you know, and it was flashing. But I can't believe that it was how much it illuminated.
Yeah, that's the tough part. I mean, in all of the observation and the time we spent observing forests in 7 different states, I've never seen anything like that. And there's no way you can tell me that I didn't see it. It was there. It illuminated at least 12 feet of forest when it went in the tree line. Mm-hmm. And it was flashing like a strobe, and it traveled. There was actually one lightning bug in the view of the whatever this was. It appeared to only be about that big, maybe. Mm-hmm. I mean, I could be wrong because the distance at night seems closer than it actually is. And really, I didn't learn that until I got up on top of that power line. When I got up on top of that power line hill and I looked down, I barely saw you guys, and you were ants, man. I was like, wow. And you really couldn't, I imagine, see me at all. The bush up there is about shoulder high. And I'll tell you right now, about halfway up that power line trail, a little further up than where we saw that craft, but sort of, or whatever that thing was, a little further up, there was one of those trails that Carrie described. And I remember I was filming, and I spun around and I said, hey guys, you got to see this. Do you remember when I was telling you that?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I turned back around and I looked to see which way the trail, went, through the area, and all the leaves were cleared off this thing. There were leaves on both sides of it, like in a hill, like something had been pushing them off as it gone through there. And I'm looking, and I followed it the other way, and I came out to the edge of the trees, and I saw what I thought was one of the creatures. And I stood there and filmed, and at that moment, I was out of breath. I was alone up there. I just found that trail. There wasn't a single hoof print anywhere around. Up the side of that hill on the the beaten down path I went up, there were dozens of impressions that were covered in leaf. You could see where 15 to 17-inch feet were leaving big, gouges. Carrie and I found similar ones with you on that first morning hike over in the area where we had, the encounters with the thermal at night.
Right.
But I stood there for a good minute or so, and I was terrified. I just had to instantly come over me the realization, you're alone. And I'm staring at what I thought was something over there. Now, what I noticed about it and what was different about this experience was that when I was looking at it, I could tell my eyes were having trouble focusing on this individual. But it's on the film, and you will get to see it. So,
Thank you, Corey Ross. $20 super sticker. Thank you very much. We will take questions for Pam and Paul. We didn't put a time limit on this show, so it's when everybody gets tired, I guess. I figured we'd have enough to talk about. But if you've got questions, make sure you put them in all caps for me, because I'm not going to read them. I'm just going to take them, and if you got something that's all in caps, I'm going to star it for later. So, and hopefully I don't miss any. But
I did have one question for you, Pam. How big do you think the gray individual was that you saw?
Well, like I said, it was just for a split second. And I'm assuming it was squatted down because the shoulder width, it was wider than Paul. It was probably, 6 inches wider than Paul's shoulders, at its shoulders. And I only saw it from part of the arms, up. I mean, it just dropped fast. And, but I would say, it was probably a good 6 inches wider than Paul is at the shoulders. Because when he walked over there,
you couldn't hardly see me.
Yeah, you couldn't hardly see him, and I could see this. So I would say probably 2.5 to 3 foot wide, maybe at the shoulders. Probably more like 3.
More like man-sized, maybe a little bigger.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't. It didn't appear to be little.
Okay.
But like I said, I didn't. I don't think it was standing up. I think it was squatting down, or because the size of the shoulders wouldn't have met with its height. It had to be like on its knees or squatted down or something.
Well, from what y'all have seen collectively, you've got gray, red, blondish motley color, and black.
Black.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much the gambit, I think. That's pretty much what we hear. White is the only one I think that's missing. But I think there's at least 5 out there. When I heard those vocalizations, and that's exactly what they were. I heard whoops. Mm-hmm. I heard people talk about whoops all the time. I never heard a whoop in my life, ever. Mm-hmm. And I know you heard them, Pam.
Mm-hmm. I heard
because
them.
You were coming out. 2
I
of
was
them.
coming out, and I couldn't believe.
I
couldn't believe, because to be quite honest, usually out there all we ever hear is wood knocks, and I've had heard some tree breaks.
Hoot owls. They don't sound like hoot owls.
And we have heard, Paul.
Yeah,
heard
some of them sound right, but there's lots of times they don't sound right.
Paul has heard a whoop before. We've heard howls in the distance, but that close that they was that day, I've never heard it that much. And it makes me wonder if they was just like, because there were strangers there. That's what it made me think.
Yeah, well, it was kind of weird because where I was standing, straight behind me, my 6 o'clock, pretty far off, 100 yards. It was up at least the other side of the hill from behind me. It was where my truck was facing. I was facing where the tree came down. And I hear that. Oh, it was 2. It was a lower and then a higher register. Yell. And then immediately after, straight out in front of me where the tree was pushed down. And I just grabbed my phone and I text there's yelling going on out here to Pam. She comes out the door and there's to the left, my 9 o'clock, there's the long, And then as she's coming out at the end of that, whoop, whoop,
I
and
heard
then
both of them.
that was to the right of the long one. And then just to the right of that one was the last, whatever that was.
Whatever that was. I don't know
Grunt,
what that was.
a grunt yell, whatever it was. But it was 5 different ones. But there was the first 2, and it was about a minute and a half between before the next one went off. And I turned the cow, trying to get the camera on while the whoops are going on, and caught the last one. So we'll at least get to hear the last one. But we caught several different vocalizations and wood knocks. I hadn't heard that many wood knocks since I was in Collins. Yeah,
a lot.
What's that?
We hear a lot of them.
A lot of wood knocks. I heard
Now,
one the other day. I take my phone out and was recording, trying to see if I could record one while I was in the swimming pool, and I recorded when I sent it to you, and I also sent you the picture of that track as well.
And the track, I mean, it was really hard to get a good picture of it. You can kind of tell what it is, but it's hard to get a good picture on it.
I've got, it's a little hard to see. I can see it, but just y'all describing it.
You have to know what you're looking at to see it.
I know I've got this here, Pam. I wanted people to hear it. It's just a wood knock.
I sent you, and I had a rock clack too, but the rock clack was harder to hear, but the wood knock you can hear.
I can't find it. Anyway, it is a knock and you can hear it. I was going to play it. But Paul and I, you and I talked about this. You don't think they're wood knocking either, do you?
I don't think so. Because they always sound the same. And I think if it was on a tree, each tree would sound differently. And also how high they hit the tree or how low they hit the tree, it's going to sound different. So it's, it makes me think that it's not wood on wood.
Well, I know people, I've said this before, I know people that can do that with their mouth very loud. And it sounds like a knock on wood, especially in the woods. I think they're doing it with their mouth. I don't think they're going to give away that motion and give themselves away by doing that, even if, they're sure no one's around. I just don't think the behavior supports that they're actually knocking on trees. Maybe they're clapping their hands, but again, that motion has to be given away. To do it with the mouth, it's just, that's it.
Yeah. Now, I do know, I guess it was right before y'all come out, we was hearing the knocks, but those
were weird.
Yeah, we had never heard anything like that before out there. It almost sounded like taking 2 2x4s and just smacking them together. And they sounded, almost every one of those sounded the same every time. But they'd be in different locations around the property. And then I think it was the last one that I heard. It was either real close or they really put some power in it because it was super loud. I don't know how to explain it.
I've heard it loud like that too. I've heard it sounds like Barry Bonds, man. Just smacked one out around Wrigley Field, man. It sounded exactly like a major league, batter smacking something out of the park. I'd really love to catch one of those guys on film doing that with their mouth.
Yeah.
It is hard to justify how many things I've heard that are so similar all the time. And it does make, pretty good sense that, all of the stuff that, we know about them, I try to imagine the size of an individual making that with his mouth to the degree that I've heard it, like what you're describing. And it's difficult to picture. You know what I mean? Because some of the stuff I've heard is will smack your eardrum. You know what I mean? It's like, it's obviously 100 yards away or so, and it's still doing that. It's like if he's doing that with his mouth, he's got to be 12 feet tall or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not.
Robert the Bruce, $10. Thank you so much, but love the Bane, by the way. Thank you very much.
Well, if that was what I seen in the power line that time, it probably was 12 foot.
Wow.
It was huge.
Tell us that story. What happened that day?
I'm just driving. I was going out to town or somewhere, but anyway, there's some cattle guards I've got to cross there, so I slowed down to go across those cattle guards, and as soon as and there's a hill there also. As soon as I started over that little hill, I just happened to look up the power line, and there was something in the middle of that power line that was, I guarantee it was every bit of 12 foot tall, and bigger than a 55-gallon barrel. You know, it was really big around. It was solid black, and I asked them. I said, "Is there a burnt tree?" Because what it looked like to me was the lower section of a tree that had been broke off and set on fire, and it burnt. You know, and it was crisp black. And I asked her if there was an old burnt tree in that power line. She said, "I don't think so." And I didn't want to back up because the people that live on the hill back there by us, the next hill over, you know, I didn't want them to be coming out and me backing up that road and them smack me. So I told her when we come back, be sure and check that out. Well, we come back and there's absolutely nothing in that power line.
That's happened to me before. That happened to me in Brown Springs. We went down there to film, and we were pulling in, and I just glanced over and I saw what I thought was like half a burnt tree in the edge of the tree line. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like you, when it dawned on me that it might be something, I looked back over there and it was gone. Mm-hmm. And Dee Doss was with me. Linda was in the back seat, and he saw it too. Mm-hmm. But you know, they'd seen a bunch of things out there, so. Yeah, it's frustrating sometimes, and it can be.
We kick ourselves a lot of times for not backing up and looking at it or whatever, you know.
Right.
I don't know, because that's happened 2 or 3 different times.
But it's always in that same area, and it's a bad place to try to back up. You know, when you know there's somebody that lives back there that could be coming up behind you.
Y'all don't know how many times I've heard Mark Zaski tell me, "Carry 2 feet to the right, man, we would have ended this."
Yeah.
You know, you just miss sometimes.
Okay. Yeah.
They're very lucky. But I do want to say this. And I think why Mark and I work so well together is because we're 2 sides of the same coin. He's evidence, I'm narrative. And that's always, to me, the narrative is as important as the evidence because we've got more of it. It's really the most of what we have is the story that's going to convince anyone that these things are happening. And I'm telling all of you right now, this story, Pam and Paul's story, Arkansas, is going to be the best one we've ever done. Just the story, the way they tell it, I almost teared up twice when you were talking about, you know, seeing the one you got a really good look at. So it's going to grip you guys. And when you see where everything happened and hear them talking about where everything happened and what they went through, I dare you to call them a liar. There's just no way, especially on top of everything that we experienced on the back of it. Mark and I experienced there. I mean, some of it you got to really be paying attention, but some of it's pretty obvious.
The initial walkthrough is one of the things that I like to do, man. You know, that's why I took off in the woods. You know, I want to see what's going on first, right? And the very first tree line I entered had like exponential tree manipulation. I mean, you can look around and just see somebody's in here tearing this place up, man. Everywhere it's torn up, and there's huge gouges all over the mountainside, all in the exact size and shape of what we typically find in these areas. So
I don't have hogs in that area.
All that stuff I saw, I was like, man, this is going to be really interesting, you know? So when I came back with like a perspective, like I already found 12 trails, like all this stuff is going on. And I'm looking at it, it actually seemed like more of a nightmare to me because of how much activity I was seeing. There were so many trails coming into your property from every one of those hills. There's multiple trails coming down. And I was like, man, and if you come down the trails, and this is how you know what they're doing, you'll come down to a perfect observation spot on the property where you can see this part of the shed and you can see people coming if they're coming from the house. You come down from this trail and you get a real good view between those two bushes right at the pool. You come down this other trail, you get the pool, the house, and then the driveway and part of that hill that goes up the mountain. I mean, it's like every single one of these things came down to a spot where the branches were broken and holes were made. These trails are right there looking at all of your property, and they're perfect observation spots. As soon as I saw that set up, that lends a tremendous amount of credibility to everything that you guys said. In the end, those are the things that we typically find when we, investigate these types of encounters or in these types of situations. So to find out, and really, I to this day, I still haven't seen that much presence. I mean, everywhere in there, you can see where they've been in there. It's like, I even saw a tree on your property that had to be 12 feet long, the trunk of a tree. If it was live, it had to weigh 300 or 400 pounds. And it was stuck up on what looked to be like almost an Apache burial, 10 feet off the ground in between two other trees that were broken off that had perfect Y knots. It appeared to be jammed in the ground at a distance from each other in a perfect line with this thing, a trunk of a tree laying up in it. Mm-hmm. That's the first time I've ever seen that.
Just 100 feet down from that, we found the small one that really looked a lot like the big one we found down by the creek. I mean, almost exactly. I mean, I've got them both on film, and I was looking. I filmed that thing real good with whatever's in the middle. That heavy limb in the middle is off the ground completely. Mm-hmm. It's not touching the ground, and there's a vine, and it doesn't look. The first thing we do is try to debunk these things, right? I mean, how could this have happened naturally? Right. And we're not saying that Sasquatch did it, but it's awfully interesting when you put all the, start adding all the things together. To me, it's almost obvious what's going on around there.
The one that gets me the most is the one up on the hill where I have my deer stand, and it's got the 3 nails in the tree.
Oh yeah,
and that limb is in between those nails.
We did not notice that for 2 days.
Right, and
I don't think it was there.
I don't see how it could be natural, but
no way. There's no way. I'm gonna explain what you're talking about to everyone. There's a red oak tree on the side of the trail at the top of the hill, and it's right by where he has a deer stand. You were using it as a stand at one point, right? Because there were 3 nails, and they were just about that far apart, just like that. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of the 2 on the bottom and the 1 on the top, there was a limb inside it. Now these are nails going straight in. They're not angled up. These are straight in the tree. And that thing is pressed all the way in there to the tree. Mm-hmm. It would have to bounced off a limb and gone in there somehow.
Makes sense that it could be natural.
Well, I mean, when we have to repeal the laws of physics to figure things out, you might as well just say Sasquatch did it. Yeah.
Well, I got up and looked at it at one point, and if you pulled on it, it didn't want to come out. So, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like the whole thing with to me, there was no physical explanation for that other than somebody jamming it in there. And it's like, but that's like 700 things on your property.
Yeah.
Where we went, man, you go in the stream and you'll see the barbed wires all manipulated so that key spots where there's a trail coming up, barbed wires pushed up, twisted around the other one, or ripped down, and there's a nice hole to come through. I mean, it's like, basically in my mind, it's either you have the Sasquatch on your property or the Viet Cong has somehow made it here, because the bottom line is there's more ground tunneling and trails and all this stuff than I've never seen that kind of stuff on a property. It's a very unique situation.
I want to answer this right quick. Miss Rita M. Hi, Carrie. You still giving Bigfoot Odyssey t-shirts to members? They weren't Bigfoot Odyssey t-shirts. They were 168 hours t-shirts. And yes, I put all that stuff on hold when Linda got sick. And I just haven't gotten back to it. But yes, I got to get some more shirts. I'm going to start doing that again. I got to get shirts out to our moderators too. So I've got a lot of stuff to do. It's been a lot. So I apologize for that. I mean, it wasn't anything that I'd promised anybody or anything. I just said I would do it. Since we had them, I'd send them out to members and I would just go down the line as you came in. But yes, Miss Rita, I will get back to doing that. I have some questions here, but I want to, before we get into these, I want you guys to talk about the tree fall and what you experienced and from your perspective that day.
The last day?
Yeah.
Because we've had several tree falls.
The one when we were there, yeah.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
It was. That was, if it was coincidence, I don't know. I don't think it was. I think.
Tell us what you remember.
As soon as y'all started filming, and she was in the pool, skimming the top of the pool off with the net. And I had been feeding. And as soon as I walked out of the shop, I guess she hit the edge of the pool with the net to clean it. And as soon as that happened, boy, that tree come crashing down.
It was big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you and I went to look for it, it's right there where I thought it would be, right up that creek. It was probably 50 foot from us.
I just didn't go far enough in. I didn't want to go over the fence.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to get in the seat ticks again either.
I'm still itching and scratching. I swear. I had chiggers.
I bet they was.
Tore up, man. I got about 100 on each ankle.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was swollen up, man, for about a week.
Oh, man.
We definitely got. That's for sure.
Did you get him,
Pam,
Gary?
oh, dude, I'm still itching. Like Pam gave me some chigger medicine too. That I think I killed him, but the damage was done.
Yeah, man.
So Pam, what's your perspective from what happened then? I mean, what were you thinking?
Well, really and truly, when it happened, it literally made me sick. I mean,
I remember you saying that.
I remember looking over at Mark and he was really excited, and but
We were both
it just made me sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was excited, and I'm glad that y'all got it on camera, but this is just what I have to go through all the time. Just like I pulled up yesterday, get out of my car, go down, and I had turned the pool off because we was going to get supposed to get a storm, and if it blows a bunch of leaves in the pool, then they get sucked up to the thing that the filters. So I had shut the pool off. So when I got home, got out of my car, walked over, turned the pool on, and was headed towards the deck, would knock. I mean, and it's like they watch me. I don't know. But that tree fall, that made me physically ill for probably about an hour. Just because I felt like that it was mad because I was in my pool and I'm surrounded by men. That's just the feeling I got.
Yep, you weren't by yourself. We were all out there. I was up in front of the big bay windows and at the house. Paul's down feeding. Mark was down shooting over. Was down the hill from me shooting into the woods. I was shooting right, and I had my mics all the way up, so I know we caught it. And as soon as you racked that thing on the edge to get to clean the net, just and you heard it hit, and I was like, "Oh my God!" It's too coincidental. I've never been in the woods all my years and just heard a tree fall. Never happened to me.
Well, a couple of years ago, Pam and I were hunting, and she was sitting in her stand by herself. I was hunting up the creek, back up in there. And we come back in for lunch, and she was telling me about all the tree falls and everything going on around her stand. And And I kind of just brushed it off, you know. And she said, "Well, if you don't believe me, you just go sit with me this afternoon, and we'll see." And I thought, well, I'll go ahead and go sit with her because I knew she didn't want to go back over by herself, you know, especially on an afternoon hunt. So I went and I sat with her in her stand, and sure enough, I bet we wasn't in there 5 minutes at the most, maybe. Calm, super calm day, and here come a tree crashing down. I mean, I don't know, it's crazy.
What do you think they're doing? Do you think they're just expressing their displeasure? Can't be happy. That can't be a happy thing, pushing a tree down.
We about lost you there for a minute or something.
Y'all did. Y'all skipped for a second. I said I was just saying. Do you think they're just expressing their displeasure? It doesn't seem like a happy thing pushing a tree over.
Yeah, he might have been mad because I went back to the stand with her. I don't know.
Which they was doing it, you know, with me there.
Yeah, it's true.
But
Hey, look, Mark and Melanie. No one's caught more Sasquatch on camera than Melanie's asking.
There's a reason for that.
I mean, is it something about females? I don't know. She's going to be joining us though on future expeditions. So
That's right. We're going to have her in the field too, and as an added bonus.
yeah, and
Big boy.
when Brad gets over all his ailments, we'll have him too. So we're do you want to give an update, Mark, on the website and what we've got? And I'm over halfway through the Odyssey. I've had the flu or something that I'm getting over now, so I haven't really looked at it a whole lot. But you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, we've been working on the site now for about a week or so. And Mel, while we were gone at the convention, basically built the whole thing. And then now we're just protecting it and adding the bonus content, going through that. The framework's all done. The site looks great. We're probably going to have a meeting to shoot everybody a link, all the producers and everything, and go over the site, finalize it. And we should be ready sometime next week to go live with Expedition Crypto Reality episode 1 of Impossible.
Cool. So that's coming.
Man. It's been so much work, this whole thing, you know.
It's been a lot.
You know? Yeah.
It's been a lot of trial and error because the way we wanted to do it was a little bit different, I think, than what most people do. But it's coming together. We are working on it. I think if people only knew
tirelessly
how much we've actually put into this. And I know Pam and Paul were talking about Mark being all over that place. Let me tell you something. If you follow Mark Zasky through the woods, you better eat your Wheaties. Because he may be exhausted. Yeah,
I mean,
well,
y'all did. Y'all didn't sleep much. Y'all come there and done your job, you know.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was enlightening and a learning experience. Every one of these investigations where we walk in blind is always like that. And to find what we found it's added to the database, and that's critical because it's validation, at least from our perspective so far, of what you've been going through. And I hear every word you say, Pam, and every word you say, Paul. And I investigated all of those places. And in looking at it, it only furthered confirmation of everything you said on that investigation. So
yeah, there's so much to it. When we get, because we're doing you guys' story after the first film, Crypto Reality, the one we've been working on. We're going to go to work on yours next because we got to go back to Donnie's and get some more and shoot some stuff that we lost.
Well, we have a situation there too. So
yeah, we did. But there's so much to it. Just every time you mention something, the smell that you smelled. The second night when we were down around the torches, when I went to the back of my truck, I called Mark over.
Yeah.
And straight across from the bed of my truck is right where the bush moved when Mark was standing there.
That's right.
And I smelled it. That smell, that strong urine funk smell.
We've been smelling that this week.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Getting close.
Yeah,
And
pretty
it's-
strong.
And it's so strong that we was on the driveway and could smell it, and then we drove all the way up the hill, where you guys would stay at up there, and we could smell it up there. So I don't know if he.
Well, it's so distinctive. It's
Mhm.
so different. It's not.
Oh.
It's not a cow pasture. It's not anything dead.
Mhm.
It's just different. It's almost like a dude that has wet himself his whole life and never bathed.
Yeah,
So it smells like,
exactly.
Yeah, there was a few spots in that area that I was picking that up, and it seemed that it was on the wind. It
Mhm.
seemed that it was on the wind because you could be standing there and not smell it for 10 minutes, and then suddenly just a light breeze from the right direction, and boom,
Mm-hmm.
there it was again for about 5 seconds. And then when Carrie called me over the first time, when I walked over, I didn't smell it. It took a few seconds, and then the wind hit me again, and I'm like, okay, I got it now. And it did seem like it was coming from where you said, and that was one of the reasons why I walked over there by myself about a half hour later, and it turned out from the investigation the next morning that it wasn't a branch, it was a tree that rooted about 2 foot, about 24 inches from the edge of the creek where the drop off was. So this tree was bent. It came out of the ground on like an arch, and the branch was right next to Carrie's truck. Well, something must have had a hold of that thing at its base, because that branch tried to attack me at one point, and I was standing there, and I came out of my skin.
Mark came running from around the front of the truck.
Yeah,
it's
man.
funny now. It's funny now. In the moment,
it's
it's
funny now.
it's heart poundingly terrifying in the moment.
Yeah.
But that's the reaction, though. That's the thing you should do when you're out there,
man.
especially when you have this level of awareness, especially. But this film, both of them, there's going to be no fluff in it. It's going to be everything they've experienced, and we got so much to talk about in it. It's going to be filled with what we've experienced while we were there with y'all.
Yeah.
And getting to hear people hear the knocks, hear the vocalization, because there's a couple throughout there. I just had the camera going all the time, and it's gonna be a lot to go through, but I can't wait to get to it. I'm trying to get
Me too.
Mark and Melanie's stuff done so I can get to it.
Last year my nephew, he come out to deer hunt, and he was sitting back, the trail me and you took the walk on that night.
Mhm.
He was sitting back in there, kind of more toward, maybe not quite halfway up the hill. And he was sitting there, and he kept seeing a bush shaking back and forth. And he said, it's really whipping pretty good, and that was the only one doing it. And he thought, well, there's a buck up there rubbing his antlers,
What I would have thought.
He started sneaking up through there, and he kept an eye on that bush all the way up. Well, when he got up there, it wasn't a bush. It was a tree about 30 foot tall. But all he was seeing, because of the hill, was just the top of it, But when he got up there, it was a hickory tree about 8 inches in diameter. And all he was seeing was the top of it whipping back and forth.
Hickory trees are hard to move.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hardest wood
That
out
shook him
there.
up pretty good.
That's right.
I bet it did.
Yeah.
But your brother has seen and we've got that story that you told in there too. That your brother saw walking down the creek.
I talked to him. Oh, okay, yeah, on that one. I've got another brother that's experienced several of them. Yeah, and he'd like to talk to you sometime, I believe.
Oh, awesome. You got my number.
Yeah.
But it just seems like such an active area. And if you look at the topography, there's no one around. You guys and the neighbors are miles away. How far is the neighbor over the hill? Half a mile?
Yeah, at least, maybe a little farther. Somebody just built a house in there, but
That's the closest one.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it.
No.
Well,
No.
I mean, they haven't been there, but I don't even know if they've got their house built yet. This has been going on years before they even purchased the property.
Well, set aside the things that you guys have seen and experienced. And I look at the evidence that you gave us before we ever got there. The game cam pics and the pictures of the tracks. The one, I don't know, it's about 8 or 10 inches that you got in the winter. And it's a perfect track. But you look at it and it's flat-footed. There's no arch to it or anything. And then the other one's a lot bigger, but it looked like water had flowed through it and kind of washed it out a little bit. But the other one was perfect. And then I believe you've got at least 2 game cam pictures with these creatures in there, because one, you see movement in the one. And you guys are going to get to see all this, but they've got a game cam pic, and you see it looks far away. It's probably not as far because of the fisheye lens. No, but you see the body, you see left arm, the shape, and then the next frame, it's gone, moved over to the right. That, to me, that's one of them right there, and he looks kind of gray. Actually, it's not a deer for sure. And you got one where it's really up close and all washed out, but you see the outline of it. You can see his hair.
Yeah, you see the hair.
And I believe that was probably about, best I can remember, that was about 4 o'clock in the morning. And that camera was back in there where you and I walked that night, where that big ladder, that big box stand is. It was straight up the hill from that, I believe, is where I had that camera at that time.
It was about 4 foot off the ground, wasn't it? 3 to 4 foot.
I'm sure it probably was. I know they set them all like that. Yeah.
Well, speaking of cameras, I know we talked about infrared lights and all that. We're going to forego all that, but Crypto Odyssey is going to be sending 4 game cameras to you guys. That's going to be our contribution to put watching each other all the way around the house. So, and that's just us really wanting to help, but also showing our appreciation for opening up. And I don't think anybody's going to realize how important this is until they hear it. It's at least that important to me. Y'all want to take some questions? I got about 11 of them up here.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Pamela Young wants to know, do you ever have electrical issues other than cameras go down or compass spin? Any electrical problems?
No. I mean, we've had just the camera glitches, but that's it.
Other than our vapor light. I mean, it does go out sometimes.
But there is light activity, and you even caught one of those on game camera, and it's a big bright light in the edge of the woods, and there's a deer there, and I think there's water on the lens, and it's making this weird effect. But the light, where did that come from? To me, it only helps back up the light that you saw, Pam, come across, that you thought was you said a comet, right?
I thought it was a comet.
Because it had a tail.
Yeah, it had a tail. Didn't realize it was right outside the window.
Well, Pam and Paul have like a cabin style house that they built themselves. Actually, it's quite impressive. The whole setup.
Yeah, it is.
When you're looking out, it's these 4 huge windows, and then there's triangle windows up at the top, and it was in the top right gable window, right?
Yeah, it was. We have all the windows in the front. Then there's 4 windows above that are rectangle with the 2 kind of triangle at the side, and we got 2 triangle at the top. Yeah, and it was at the center windows. It come through that little triangle. That's when I caught it out of the corner of my eye, and then as it was coming across the big rectangle window, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, that's a big comet. And then I realized that because it was illuminating inside the house, I was like, oh, and it was slowing down. And I was like, oh my God, that's right outside the window.
And you said it spun. The tail spun around and went right back out the way it came.
Yeah, when it got to the edge of the window, it stopped. It literally stopped. And that the whole center of the whole ball of it just spun. And that tail, it just whipped. And it shot off. I mean...
Well, the light that's on that game camera looks about the same size that you described as that. So to me, it's corroboration. Now, there are a lot of people that are going to look at that and say that is the Sasquatch, and they might be 100% right. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is.
Fair enough.
I mean, you know, there's weird things that happen, I guess, throughout the world that can't be explained. And if you can, if somebody can prove that the light is Sasquatch, then, you know, fine. But right now, it's all a big guessing game, you know.
Oh yeah, well, for sure. And I'm sure we could all point back to some lived experience at some point in our life of something that happened that we can't explain.
Yeah.
But that's definitely one of them. But just having that corroboration, that image to show to go along with that, there's so much to this that I think y'all are even going to be surprised at just how much and how dynamic this thing's going to be.
There was no way, like we've been in the woods so much, and we've never photographed anything like what I saw flying through there.
Mm-hmm.
We caught that.
First
That
time.
was smaller. That was like golf ball size, I'd say.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, before we get to this question, I'll tell you what I saw. Because we were about halfway up the hill. You could see down to the bottom, and you can see that entire hill. It's 500 yards long at least, to the top of that hill and down, the one you went up.
Mm-hmm.
This thing would start at the top through this cutover. We're in a power line, essentially. And this thing would come down the right of way. Looked like it was just over the weeds. I mean, fast. Like about as fast as a really fast drone would fly. Fireflies are not built for speed. They float around, and you see one here. No, and it was pulsing like this.
Mm-hmm.
I saw
all the way down the hill, and then it turned and went out, and then I saw it again going up on the right. Could have been a bug. It wasn't any bug I've ever seen or heard of.
Yeah.
Firefly. I didn't see any other fireflies around. That was the only one I saw.
I'm of the mind that unless there's a new species of, you know, bug that we're unfamiliar of that can light up the forest like that, we saw something that's unexplainable at this point, you know.
And we got it on camera. I know we got it because the camera was pointed that way. But
Well,
it won't be blue. It'll be white.
I've been waiting 7 years for that. And I got to be honest with you, it was anticlimactic. I assumed that when I did see something like that, something's going to happen to my brain or something was going to go wrong. and it was just like, well, there it is. And it lit up the forest. And that was the last I saw of it, you know. And it was like, well, I've seen that now, you know.
Yeah, I guess so. It's it's confusing is what it is.
It was
trying to make it into something that doesn't make any sense.
Well, for me, the clincher was when it was on the left side of the field at the base of the run that went up on a 45-degree angle. When it was on that and it flashed and it disappeared for a second, it popped back on light again, 35 or 40 feet from where it was. And there was a firefly right next to it. It looked nothing like the firefly. It moved nothing like the firefly. It lit up 15 times more forest than the firefly. And it then went in there past the firefly into the tree line and lit the entire tree line up where it was. So I was like literally watching a firefly while I saw the craft, and it went right by me.
Well, whatever it was blue. It was blue. But the very first light I saw at the top of the hill, 10 feet to the right inside the woods, was a bright amber flash and then shoot out of the woods toward the power line. And then that's when the whole thing started going off, and it lasted about 5 minutes and it was over. It didn't do it anymore.
That's crazy, man.
Crazy. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know what they call them, bars or something.
Rods.
Rods.
I got 10,000 of them things on film.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that's bugs.
Okay. We get a lot of those on our game cam.
Well, you get the aperture on your video camera and the frame rate, and then the aspect ratios. You can create that with a bug. It's just a bug flapping its wings and it's putting it together. But I'm not saying that there aren't things out there that are not rods, but we do know that bugs will make that shape. We do know that much. Y'all don't lambast me in the comments. Just leave one. Just leave a comment. And if you address either one of us directly in the comments, we'll answer you directly between myself and Mark. Chris Slagger. Sorry, Chris. Did they know what it was when they first saw the booger? Did you know what it was when you first saw it? Had a pretty good idea, didn't you?
When I say first saw what?
when you first saw the booger? Well, I know Pam's gotten a good look. You knew what you were looking at, didn't you?
Yes. There was no doubt in my mind.
You saw a primitive.
Huh? I'm sorry.
You saw a primitive.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the whole thing, so.
Mr. John Schleifer wants to know, Mark, has anything followed you home in the past 7 years of research, be it something physical or otherwise?
I don't believe so. You know, I think when we moved into the house we were in, there were some unexplainable things going on at first for about the first 3 years. And then that has faded with time. But no, I don't think we've ever had anything like that. We research in areas that we have to, most of the time, travel a pretty good distance to get there. Though we do live on a state park on the outskirts of it, and they have been reported in those areas. We haven't had anything like that at our house. We get wildlife from the park. I've had, eagles, bald eagles, when we first moved in, smack down in the pond in the backyard, which is about 10 feet wide, and take the last of our koi and fly away with it. That was interesting. He flew right back to the park in a big nest, and you could see him like, oh, there it goes. You could watch it getting torn apart. I was like, man. But and we get a lot of rabbits and mice and stuff, but not anything, and nothing like that so far. I've heard of it, and I wouldn't want something like that to happen, but no, we don't have that.
Well, they'd have to make it through the neighborhood.
Yeah, I don't think that's a stretch under certain drastic catastrophe kind of conditions. If there was a giant fire in that forest that's adjacent to our neighborhood, we'd be in trouble. We'd be in trouble that people, the likes of which people have never seen and probably would not believe until they went through it. Yeah.
Cool. David Weathers has one for Paul. Deer season's coming up. How does Paul feel going to his stand in the dark?
I think
that's
really
one
depends on where I hunt out there. Up the creek where you and I go, where you and I went back in there. I don't like to go in there before daylight.
That's the only place I ever got creeped out there. I got that creep when you and I were walking through there. It was so still and so quiet. It was 3 o'clock in the morning or after, but man, that was the one true time that I can remember having that ominous feeling. Was then.
You were in the same woods we were in that sounded like New York City, but with bugs. Yeah. And it was dead quiet. Because, dude, you couldn't hear. And at one point, I would talk, and when you answered me, I had difficulty hearing you. You were only about 10 feet from me. It was so deafening from the bugs, the crickets, cicadas, the frogs. There was so much stuff going on. It was difficult to hear if they were coming up the bank. So I kept, focusing on that. I actually went over and grabbed some leaf litter, moved it around, got the sense of what it sounded like, and I really got attuned to that spot. And I heard several instances during that first night where if you couldn't have paid me enough money to walk down that hill. And I don't think I did at night, not till the next morning.
Yeah.
Through that thermal moving around down there, I was like, yeah, I'm all set. I'll stay right here. That's why we have the thermal. So we don't have to,
right. Well, I want Pam to answer that question too when she comes back.
Yeah.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I know that what's creepier than that is hearing all those bugs around you at night, and then all of a sudden they all quit. That'll creep you out. I don't care what you're aware of. You know something's around, because the way I believe that works is something comes around a predator, because these crickets are all listening to each other, right? And one stops, so the one next to it stops, and it's just a chain reaction. Everything stops. That's how I don't think it's just the presence of anything. I think something gets close to one of those, and he shuts up, so the one next to him shuts up, and then the whole thing. I've only experienced that a couple times in my life, but you know something's around. There's a predator around at least. Miss Jean Hudson. So, Mark, would you say that those trails surround the house like a containment center where the house is the center of the wheel? I think most of those are game trails that we saw. But what do you think, Mark?
Yeah, there's a lot of game trails for sure. And then there's the other trails. And those trails are strategically placed 50 feet inside the tree line next to the road. You can drive down any one of his roads, and just inside the tree line, there's trails running right alongside the road. Some of those trails have undulate tracks, but there's an interesting dynamic going on their property. And if you really look at the situation, it's not just your property. There are houses smack down in the middle of these ravines all over the place. And if they have the right conditions, like your conditions, I think are excellent, because essentially what you've provided is a game preserve for them. They have that place completely set up, and they're watching those deer. I'm telling you, they're watching those deer. If you think about it, every single place that Carrie heard those noises from were on the outskirts of this. And the weird part is I didn't see any deer up in the surrounding. That's not that they weren't there. But it seemed to me that you had a bunch of females and some younger ones bedding down right inside your property. And based on where they kept coming from, it wasn't like they were leaving, at least for the 3 days we were there.
Right.
When Carrie starts describing positions on the outskirts of that, and I see that inside the bullseye, there's a herd of deer, and then you've got the situation with Pam, and you've got, the whole residential homestead kind of thing going on. So I think that, it's a really interesting situation that would require long-term observation to get any really solid conclusions on what's going on. But I would venture a guess that if you were, with long-term observation there, you would eventually see one of these creatures in the right conditions, in the right spot, take one of those deer. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you would witness it, whether it's dawn or dusk,
We used to find a lot of deer bones out there.
Okay.
Back when, those open fields that I've got now, that was really growed up. Where we had the tiki torch back there, that was really growed up when we first bought the place. And we'd always find deer bones back there.
It just seems that they would be like a primary focus because, when I spoke to you about the hog situation, while you said there were hogs in Arkansas, they weren't around your area very prevalent. Here in Florida, I see, we see like that it seems, based on what we find and the things that we hear from reports, that hogs are, would be pretty easy for them to catch. I think they're a primary food source down here. Mm-hmm. But with them not being in the numbers in your area, that kind of limits the meat. And so I think it's like almost like having a pond in my backyard with goldfish in it and the eagle flies over. It's the same concept. These are wild animals we're dealing with, but they're also incredibly instinctive, and they will take advantage of situations when they can. And I think that your property provides one of those situations. In addition to it being a curiosity thing with, all the homestead stuff, you have a unique situation with game on your property. And that's, I think, of interest to the creatures. Mm-hmm.
Simple as that. All right. EDC Gear and Pocket Knife wants to know, so you guys get scared having Bigfoot around your house? Pam. We know Pam.
Yeah, it has really bothered her. Yeah, she's taken it pretty hard. Me, it's made me, since she's seen that one last year especially, it makes me more aware when I go out. I still go out there in the woods, a lot of times even not carrying a gun or anything, but she's getting on me about that to quit doing that. But,
well, tell me this. Are you glad you know, or do you wish that you just didn't know anything and just there were just these things going on around you?
I don't know, really. Part of me would rather not know it, but then on the other hand, it's probably good to know, just to be, prepared and alert,
To me, it's the perfect situation to learn a lot, at least about those in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and starting, getting documentation, writing things down, recording whatever you can. And maybe you can start to pattern them a little bit and get to know. I mean, Pam, you can pretty much guarantee when you walk out to the pool, somebody's going to knock, tree's going to fall, something's going to happen. Happens every time, right?
Yep, pretty much.
So that's a pattern, that's predictability, that's recordability. Any kind of repetitive documentation that you have just furthers the corroboration of what's going on. I mean, I look at your property like this. This is a very easy, simple way to look at it. If you want to understand, I think, what's going on your property, remove the refrigerator from your house and have nothing but what's on your property to eat. Now tell me, how important are those deer?
Mm-hmm.
You'll understand them better if you understand it like that. The bottom line is there's plants on your property that can feed them, and there's trees that have nuts. And we've examined a lot of that stuff, and I looked at all of those things when we were there. But that's not going to be enough, specifically because a lot of the plants are seasonal. You guys do have a little bit harsher winter than South Florida, so I don't know exactly what species survive through the winter and how much green makes it. But in the end, this season that's approaching is, I think, preparation time just based on human history. There's a reason they call it harvest time. It's because winter has nothing. So in the end, this is, a real important time for them coming up, I think. Living off the land is what they do. And so I think you're going to see more activity surrounding those deer on your property through these next few months into the fall and probably even into the winter time.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask y'all this. When you dress a deer, what do you do with the leftovers?
I take them up that trail where me and you went. If
So
you go a little bit further.
So you've been feeding them. You've been feeding them. You fed them fish. You fed them fish one day. You said you had 3 bass.
That's right.
I get to thinking about that, and I just walked over again the other day and was looking at that situation. And, I've watched bear on TV, and they'll go in to these streams and try to catch fish, and they're pretty good at it. But sometimes in deep water, even just, I say deep, 2 or 3 foot, they have issues catching that fish, So I can't see a coon taking that fish out of that creek.
There ain't a coon alive that can handle a 4-pound bass.
No,
He just doesn't happen.
And I know the fish couldn't have went upstream and it couldn't have went downstream because there was not enough water in the creek to get all the way down to. I mean, we've seen the creek. It's just little holes here and there, and there's not a lot of water in between each hole during summertime, and that's the way it was at that point. And so I know the fish didn't swim off.
That's gone. And if a coon had gotten a hold of that big one, the 4-pounder, there would have been scales and all everywhere. There would have been a scene.
And I guess I already tell the people watching what went on there. I guess they're probably
let's tell that story.
My brother and I, he had been fishing one day and he brought some live fish out to the house. He had a good size, probably a good 4-pound bass, and some larger. I don't remember if it was crappie or I want to say it was crappie that he had with him, and he just wanted to put them in the creek overnight, and then the next day we were going to go ahead and clean them. And so we took them down to the creek, and there's a good sized hole right there, probably maybe 2 or 3 foot deep at the most. And we just took all the fish and put it in there. And I watched that big bass. He swam up and went under a tree root right there. That's where he stayed. Well, the next morning I went out there, and every one of those fish that we put in there was gone.
And if you look at it, when he says a hole in the creek, that's what it is. The way the water runs, it's not like a big creek. The rocks, there's no getting out of there. There's not another hole going down through or going back up. It's just right there in that one spot where water comes down and that's washed it out.
Yeah.
We saw it. I got it all on film. I filmed the whole thing. Everything we're talking about here, you guys are going to get to see. All of it. All of it.
My mind goes to scenes where it's 3 o'clock in the morning and he's making his way upstream, and then he hits the hole. It spooks the bass and notices it's in there, and then just.
Right.
My thing is, when you came back, did you happen to notice any spots like where I was pointing out where something had been in the creek and it was milky? Because that one time when we went there, you could see there was a milk trail where somebody's footsteps went through that creek and came to the other side.
Remember you pointed that out there.
So. Did you happen to notice that morning?
No, I did not.
Okay.
There's 776 people here watching. Lathis, have you considered putting a looped video camera, i.e. commercial security camera, at your home? No IR beam to warn them, could watch them approaching your home and taking your piece. Have you thought about putting cameras up? I know you've got game cameras out, but the idea is to keep them from coming up to the house, right? You kind of want those IR lights.
So far, I don't think we've had them. As far as I know, we haven't had them actually come to the house. You know,
you got handprints on the window.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. So maybe they do.
And I heard something hit the house one night. It hit it three different times.
There are no trees over your house. None. Zero.
And this was a hit. I mean, I could tell it hit the house. And each time I would get up and go look, and I couldn't see nothing. And
bored.
And then when I go to bed at night, I go into the bathroom, and there's been times I would hear stuff hit the window. It didn't sound like a bug. A couple of weeks ago, something hit pretty hard. It hit the screen. So I don't know. Usually you can tell if it's a bug or something that hits, but this didn't. A lot of times this doesn't sound like a bug.
Well, I think they're trying to get a reaction out of you, and I know you don't want to become that. You don't want to become just a reaction to the things that they do.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be worth ignoring.
Yeah.
When they do things like that. I know every time you hear the knocks, you say, "Really?"
Yeah, that's what I did. That was this summer. I was in the pool, and you got to understand, I'm terrified and mad, all balled up into one. And I was in the pool, and I heard a knock. I literally stopped, and I was like, "Really?" And as soon as I said that, the tree broke, or the limb broke, and then another knock. So I got out of the pool after that. I was just like, "Oh, I'm done."
That is the thing about this. There's no ambiguity to it.
None.
It is so intentional. You know, this is either somebody, it ain't somebody, or it's these creatures that y'all have actually seen. All the things that you're experiencing. I'm saying it's just a wealth of experience that we're going to cram into. It's going to be it's going to be 2 hours long, at least. I can tell you that much.
Right. Expedition, man, I shot footage all over that mountain I shot 5 cameras. I got 5 cameras out this time, Carrie. Can you believe that? That's the first I've ever got more than 1 out of my research area without having damage.
Well, I had my camera was all I had. I had the 2 I used for the interview, but outside of that, my 1, and I got 400 gigs.
I got about that much too. Yeah, it's nuts.
I had 2.6 terabytes from 31 devices in a week at 168 hours. 2.6 terabytes. This is, 400 gigs. Alan Wallace has a question. Pam Paul, do you hear vocalizations like the Sierra sounds? You ever hear anything like that?
I think that one year, year before last, or
now that whenever your brother saw it go up the creek, you went the next day.
Oh yeah.
And you heard some weird.
Yeah, I don't, and honestly, I cannot even remember what that sounded like. But it was strange, gibbering almost, I guess.
Pam, you and I heard that tone that first night.
Yeah.
It was off down right where y'all were catching the thermal. Is right where it came from. This was before dark. I heard the huh, just out of nowhere. Just
Didn't you hear that this week?
What?
No, drunk or something.
yeah.
One day this week, I thought you told me you did.
And then after it got dark, y'all were over by Mark's truck. Pam and I were sitting up there. This is before we went live. It was like 9 o'clock at night. And that it was quick. That to me, that's that tone of the Sierra sound. So I mean, what else is that? You know, these experiences.
When I went up on the last day and I was up there on that trail and I was staring at whatever that was, filming with the Osmo, I thought I heard 2 gunshots because it sounded like they were just over the hill from me. When I came down, you guys said you heard knocks. I was thinking because they were so loud, it must be the neighbor. Because, you know, there were those on the backside of your shed. If you keep going, you go through that one clearing and you find that beautiful tree on the left with the shed and some kind of a building there. And I assumed that was another person's property. So I turned around and I came back through. But that's where it sounded like it was coming from, that area. And I thought it was gunshots, man. They were so loud, but they were behind me. And it just, you know, it was during one of those moments where I was like kind of in a daze about what I was looking at. And when I heard it. And so when I came down, though, what did you guys actually hear?
They were not gunshots. They didn't ring out like gunshots.
Okay.
No. It sounded like someone took a stick and hit wood. And because I was walking toward Paul and I got these recorded too. He was coming toward me as I was coming out toward the house. It was behind him and to my left. And I heard them both. Yeah. And I was like, and I just looked at Paul and shaking my head.
It was not up there, right?
Yeah. No. That's why we asked you if you heard them.
From my position, if you put 2 dots, like I'm here, I heard it over here, like just behind me, like maybe 150 yards behind me down that hill. That is where I heard it. Like almost like when I went up there, maybe I spooked somebody off that hill.
There's nobody there to shoot a gun, right?
No. It was not a gunshot. I've heard a lot of gunshots out there. That wasn't one.
Okay. And like I said, you know, it was weird because, you know, a couple of times I heard things. And then when you started to describe, I think it was the second night, how the sound would travel sometimes between the ravines. You know, I remembered that when you guys said, you know, it was knocks, man. It was knocks. But I swear I would have told, you know, I told you guys, oh, did you hear those gunshots? You know what I mean? Like I heard that's what I thought. It was so loud, I thought they were gunshots.
There's not even a house in that direction. Someone would have had to been in their woods or in the neighbor's woods with a gun. And what season is it?
Nothing.
Nothing. There's no. Yeah. So
that's another incident, and literally one that, you know, I was involved in that up on that hill, man. And the funny part was, and like I said, while that happened, I was like on camera saying, I'm seeing one over here. I think, man, I'm on camera saying it. So I don't know if I got him or not, because when I started seeing stuff, I was like, oh man, and that's when I started filming. But I don't remember whether it was before or after those knocks. But it would have been so loud if I did record them. So I'm gonna go through the footage and see, man.
Well, when it comes to the story, that we had day 2, took about 5 or 6 hours to get all of it done, filmed, and put away. I got those cards put away. When we got to Impossible, I'm glad we stayed the last day, because that's when we got most of the stuff that you guys are going to be able to see on Impossible, the segments that we got for the investigation film that we're putting together. When we were walking up that creek, and I would stop, and Mark's like, okay, when we stop, turn and film at your 5 o'clock and at your 7 o'clock, because that's where they're going to follow you from. Made perfect sense to me. And we heard things when we were going up through there. Now I'm trying to follow Mark, and he's, you know, all over the place. It's like he doesn't feel it until he stops. Well, I'm not like that. I feel it while I'm going, and he's ahead of me, you know, 30, 40 yards, and I can hear things. So I stop, and he's up there looking at something, you know, and we're looking at these large, what look like tracks in the creek bed, and we're filming these things. where something had stepped in the rocks, and it looks like a footprint, heel to toe, with the mid tarsal and all that, good stuff. But they're sparse through there. It's not like a set of tracks through there. But they obviously moved through that creek. They're going to leave less sign behind, other than obviously being heavy and moving the rocks.
When you looked at that track, tell me you saw that 4.5-inch rock pushed in, like all the way down, man.
Got it all on film.
I couldn't
Got it
believe
all on film.
I couldn't believe it. In the track, they smashed a huge rock down in it. I was just like, man, it's heavy.
Yeah. Dude. That we got so much on that. That's going to make the whole thing. But again, we have so much to put in there. I'm excited about it. You guys are going to really enjoy it, I think. Rick B, what event happened to make Paul and Pam realize there was activity on their property? Can you point back to a single thing that was the epiphany?
Well, I guess there was always weird things going on. I mean, which he found the first tracks on that one path.
That first set of tracks that I ever found, that kind of put it in my mind then, but
I mean,
I was still on the fence about, are they really real or not? And so
You didn't want to believe that was out there, did you?
no, I didn't. I wanted to hunt there.
And I guess probably wasn't too long after that,
Then we just started having more activity. After that.
yeah.
It just kind of
things that
ramped
couldn't be
up,
explained.
Yeah.
Tell you, this seems to be the case more times than not, that when people become aware and they start to pay attention, the activity ramps up. It's game on.
Yeah. My brother, he used to sneak in there actually and hunt back when he was just a kid, and this would have been 30 years ago, probably. He'd slip back in there, and he said he used to find big tracks back there a lot.
Well, y'all got tracks. You got a perfect track picture of it in the wintertime. Anybody in North Arkansas walking around barefoot in the wintertime, my hat's off to you. You better than I am.
We got some hillbillies, but they're not that tough.
The funny thing is it's either the Sasquatch or you have the exact tightrope walking hillbillies we have down here.
Yeah.
They took a vacation on your property, and they're walking the tightrope barefoot in the winter, and they're traveling, and this is what they do. It's like you remember the brothers that used to tip their car over at the fairs and drive it on wheels. They're traveling, man. They're show. They go everywhere. It's ridiculous, man. Like we see these tracks and they're all in line again. It's like, come on, man.
That reminds me. Wait till you guys hear Sasquatchicus ficus. Wait till you hear that. That Mark made. It's epically hilarious. You guys.
Like 5 years ago.
That's going in the film actually. That's going to be at the end of the Odyssey.
Melanie made me put it on the site too.
Did she? Okay. You guys will get to see that. It's so funny. It's like about the bushes coming alive and walking around and throwing rocks at you. it's the whole thing. You got to hear it. It's the way he does it is funny. Richard Faraday. Hey Mark, your beard has been looking good. What products do you use? No question mark on there, by the way. Thanks for that, Richard.
No, it's rhetorical.
Okay.
The products I use are age and mileage. That's it.
Here's a good question. Ray Rosendahl. Do they stay all year or just certain times of the year? Y'all hear them all the time, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much all year, I believe. Yeah. Because
I know I have stuff going on even, during hunting season, even November, December. So.
Well, I got to scroll back through here, guys, because if y'all were asking questions while I was on the questions, I missed every one of them. So that was the last one that I had. Ken Flat Rock. Pam, have you ever been home alone and heard tapping on the window?
Ooh.
No, I mean, like the front of the house, it's all glass. And I can't say if I was home alone, but there's times it sounds like little bitty tiny rocks just up against the windows, and it doesn't sound like a bug. it sounds like somebody is taking a little tiny rock and just like thumping it at the window. And but as far as like, you know, something come up and tapping the window, no.
All right. I've got 2 more start here. We're starting to get hit with trolls. Looks like we got the cashews here, so she'll run them down. Miss Vicky, how'd you forget the handprints on the windows, Paul? LOL. I just star everything that's in caps, y'all. But yeah, that's all part of the story too. And you said it's like the edge of these huge handprints, like somebody put their hands up there.
Mm-hmm. I was looking in.
Mm.
Which I remember even when I showed him to Paula, and you know, when we would get there, he was so focused on getting in there and getting the work. And I was like, look at these handprints. And he looked at them. He's like, oh, I don't know if that's handprints. I said, look, you can see the fingers, you know. But he was always so focused when we would get there. He just wanted to get right to work. We were so ready to get that house done.
Well, y'all did an excellent job.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to see this home. It's amazing.
Beautiful.
Linda would die to live a place like that. Robert the Bruce, Carrie, sounds like you need to enlist all of us to help you get through the footage. You know what? I have thought about that several times, getting people to go through it, but I would still go through it all myself anyway, just so I would know that if something got missed, I missed it. You know, if anything was found later. So, but I have thought about that, doing that. How you guys feeling? You all right? Tired?
Yeah.
We've been going for an hour and 26 minutes.
I'm fine. As long as I don't start coughing again, I may have to get up and walk out.
Amy Call says, if you don't have dogs, they're a good tool. You ever thought about that? Maybe get a dog, a good outside dog?
We thought she wanted one, but really don't want one because I don't want to run the deer off, you know.
Right.
Because we deer hunt a lot during the winter, you know, because we can step right outside and, you know, hunt right there. So we don't have to travel to go. And so we hunt basically every day. And I don't want those deer run off, you know.
Makes perfect sense to me. Because that's exactly what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Dixie's here watching using Jason's phone. Jason, when are you going to get Dixie, or Dixie, tell your daddy to get you an account so we can see your name up there, not Jason's anymore. Hey, Uncle Carrie and Mark, Paul, and Pam. Love Bigfoot Cheeky. Hey, Dixie. Here's Robert Bruce and Carrie and Mark. Have you ever used a Faraday box on your electronics? We've kind of discussed that, how we would go about doing that. But you got to think about what we've got and what we use and how we use it when we're out there. It's so cumbersome to have anything like that. It would need to be something form-fitting. And like Mark and I have talked about, different materials that we would use. We didn't have any issues at Pam Paul's with that. None. But Florida, anywhere we've gone in Florida, it's been an issue.
Big time. Big time issue.
If I didn't have 30 batteries, we probably wouldn't have anything.
It's funny.
Jessica Dennis, to add to my question, hi, Mark. 2, sorry I missed your name. Oh, again, I'm scrolling back through here, guys, looking for these questions. Ranger Don, I don't know if I can answer that. Carrier, what town are they in? Thanks. North Arkansas, man. That's about all we're going to give away here. And I'm sure you all understand why. This kind of activity, to me, it's a researcher's dream. I can imagine you've already had people beating down your door to come film out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
We won't mention who. But they did not like us going out there.
No?
No.
Oh.
No, the other people that wanted to come out, I told them that Carrie had dibs, and they didn't like it.
Well, they wanted to bring like a commercial,
mm-hmm.
Discovery or Animal Planet or something out there, and we were chosen over that. We like it. Jack, is there that stanky aroma that is close to the Florida stank? Exactly the same, Jack. It's exactly the same thing. There's no mistaking that aroma, that stanky aroma that you mentioned. Mark, years ago, nailed it. The first time I heard him say it, stale urine and an old bar rag, dish rag smell. That stale dish rag. It's not so much like a skunk. Although I could see why people would say skunk when they first smell it, because it does have that musky funk to it. But it's just the strong pea smell, but it's not skunk pea smell.
Yeah, I've never really thought it smelled like a skunk. It was more just a rotten pea.
I imagine they probably get into all kinds of stuff. So it doesn't surprise me. People describe them smelling like garbage sometimes. People, like hot garbage. I heard that one like 3 times from encounters here in Florida. It smelled like hot garbage.
I've always thought they were marking their territory.
You're describing seeing the creature 60 yards behind the dumpster of a restaurant. And I can smell the dumpster from here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it smells like hot garbage. I got you, but that's not what, like everywhere we've been, it's always been the same, including on your property. It was definitely the same, I didn't get a whole lot of it. When I did get it though, it was like, it was a reminder for sure.
Yeah. And it wasn't real strong when you guys was there.
Last
year,
it was terrible.
Man, almost every day, it was really strong.
They might have been keeping their distance with us, but I know I smelled it at least 3 or 4 times. Quick. It was fleeting. And I can imagine they understand windage. They probably stay downwind of us most of the time.
We smelt it pretty strong Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
I guess it was there in the driveway. It was pretty strong
It was
through
pretty
there. I
strong.
was driving through my tractor first, and I could smell it. And then I went back and got Pam. And I think we rode side by side down through there. And
You smell it.
What's the thought there? I mean, are you thinking they got to be close?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I know last year it was so bad. It was almost every day you'd smell it. And I remember walking outside one day and it was so strong, I almost started gagging. I mean, it was that strong. And I thought, this is coming from one of those creatures. I mean, where is it at? How close is it?
Right.
Because it was that strong and it was like that a lot.
Mhm.
Start looking upwind for sure, because I'm sure the wind can change directions as fast as they may be. I don't think they can move that fast to get, if the wind does happen to change directions. But I'll tell you what. Go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, it's interesting you described a gray one on your property. That's an achromatic individual, and on the lighter coloration they are. Our data indicates that those guys can actually change colors as they move through the trees. So like the sun will be shining on certain sections of the tree, and depending on how much diffusion is coming off that forest, if the sun's really bright and it's like, very few clouds in the sky, a gray individual and under the right situation can appear to be green and just blending in with the bush, standing right there watching you with his hand on his face like this. And you never see him because you're not looking for something green. But just to let you know, you just described the exact individuals that we see here in Florida. And I've seen multiple gray individuals here myself. In fact, I filmed when it was about 9 feet tall about 5 months ago, and the footage got cooked somehow while I was filming it. In the end, this dude changed colors on camera and in front of me several times just by the canopy moving. There was a little bit of wind. And I watched when he leaned forward, he had white skin. He came out of that, and the top part of his head where he was bald, kind of got a bald spot like me, and his head went up with hair. But this part of it was out in the sun, and his skin was bright white. It had a chrome glow coming off of it. When he went back, he turned green again in like a thousandth of a second. His whole face was green. You could see it as it spread across and moved back in. So when you're seeing the tree knockdowns or you're hearing these things in the bushes and you don't necessarily see them, try to begin to identify what color you're actually looking for. Because a lot of times they can be green, and that's what our data shows, and not just that. But if they're moving through deadfall and it's a gray individual, there's a high likelihood it's going to be even more difficult to see than when he's in a green bush, because
Mhm.
they blend in with the dead stuff even better.
If you can get them moving while you're around there. I mean, you can't see a deer when he's standing still in the woods.
Right.
I mean, they're hard to see. So, and these creatures.
Mhm.
But Mark, you caught a great example of what you're talking about, and because I'm going to put it in the Odyssey for him to see, and it's 20 seconds of film where you see this thing changing. He get a little bit closer to the bush, and then you see the face change colors, and it kind of looks like it changes at all. But there's so many clear frames in there of the face poking out there, and you can see it's behind the bushes looking through. You know, I know you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, we've seen that a
Thought
lot.
it was Banner, but there's not no forehead there, I don't think, for it to be Banner. It's related to Banner. It's in the same area, so why not? You guys, let's take one more question, and then we'll wrap this thing up. We'll do our end segment and tell everybody thanks for everything. Amy Call wants to know, have you spoke to the neighbors, or are you planning to?
I did talk to a lady that lived on the river. The river's about a half mile from me, and then she lived up the river or down the river. She was probably, a mile or so away from me. And I never mentioned it to her. She brought it up to me that she thought she had one there on the river behind her house, and it was mimicking her children. And it also turned her John boat upside down in the river. And so, and I never told her my experiences or anything. I just listened to hers.
Mimicking the kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary.
That's creepy.
Yeah, that's like trying to fool you, maybe, type of stuff.
And then
Native Americans said that. They did that a lot. They would mimic children and women in distress in the forest, trying to lure people in.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I did speak with a lady that I go to church with, or used to go to church with, and she lived probably about 5 or 6 miles on upriver from me, through the woods there. I spoke with her a little bit about it one time, just asked her if she believed in Bigfoot, and she said, yeah, I do. She said, I actually pulled up in my yard one night, and they were standing in my yard. And I asked her where she lived, and I didn't know where she lived at that time. I asked her where she lived, and that is actually about 5 to 6 miles through the woods there from me.
And that's connected. It's all connected.
Yeah, it's
y'all give me 2 minutes. Give me 2 minutes.
So what I'm seeing from the investigation is a lot of corroboration. Right now, I'm going over to thermals, and I've got 4 other cameras to go through. I shot the bulk of the footage on the Osmo because it's a really small camera and I can stay mobile. But if I was going to tell you where I think probably your best options are to catch one of these guys on film, it would be the situations that Pam continues to describe, where when you come out to your car, it's in these little spots, and I think that there's something about that you keep mentioning when you come outside. When you come outside, it seems like when you come outside, to me, it seems like somebody's watching the front of your house. You know what I mean? And looking for this.
That's what I feel like.
Yeah, and so if you were to walk outside of your house and just take a really quick look around and look up the hills and look down and all that stuff, I guarantee you're going to see holes in the trees. And in one of these times, he's going to be standing in one of those holes. And I bet you there's a bunch of them. But somebody's obviously watching. I mean, the timing, it was like what Carrie mentioned earlier. This is so obviously intentional. It's ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's like, I've never seen one where there's this many examples of like, okay, she's going in the pool, action. And then, like, it seems like 3 or 4 individuals respond when you're going in the pool. It's like every time, you know,
Right.
like they're taking a cue, you know.
Mhm.
Unless we're out there and then trees start coming down.
Which
Yeah,
to
until
me, I mean, you know, being a woman, to me, that's terrifying.
I
You
would
know,
imagine so.
You know, because I even deer hunt, you know, out there by myself. I don't know if that's going to happen anymore. Because I can tell this year, it seems they have become more active than they was last year. I don't know what that means, if anything, but it's going to be really hard, even with a rifle, to walk out and sit out there by myself. I don't think I can do it. I don't know. Just have to wait and see.
Especially with muzzleloader.
Yeah, especially with a muzzleloader, because I do. Because
I take my 7 mag with my muzzleloader.
yeah,
You might be able to tell the difference. I don't know, but there's one more from John Thompson here. It says, when and where's the next expedition? We've got 6 films to put together right now in the can that we need to get completed, John. The next expedition planned is 168 hours in December. But after that, we're considering Virginia and a couple other places. But that's a good place for us to put the call out. Anybody that has anything going on like this around their place, they want to get their story out there, have us come check it out. You can call me 601-215-0581 or text, email bigfootodyssey@gmail.com or cryptoreality.us@gmail.com to get in touch with us. And you can find all that stuff in the description too, except the number. But one more thing before we get to the final segment. You guys have anything else you want to say before we jet on out of here? Pam and Paul?
I would like to say that, you know, the main reason why I wanted to do this, you know, Paul was apprehensive at first. But when you go through something like what I've been through, a lot of people in the chat have been through, you know, and some of these people, like, for instance, KDG always comes to my mind, being a child and having one of these things come up on you. I just hope people will start coming forward and telling their story. I mean, and they don't have to give their name. They don't have to give where they live. But what people don't understand is that's all we get. That's all we can get information from, is people's stories. That's how we collect evidence. And also, you know, people that might just decide to click on it and listen to it and think, well, maybe I need to be careful when I'm out in the woods, you know. But you guys were amazing, so professional, so the respect you showed was amazing, and I couldn't imagine anybody doing a better job than what you two did.
I agree.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I want to thank you too for opening up. This is, you know, it takes a lot of courage to come forward and say, you know, the types of stuff that's going on, and you know, really invite the public into what's going on. And so I commend you on your courage to do this, because I agree with you, Pam. I think if more people do this, then, you know, it's going to help move the needle forward. Certainly where Carrie and I and the mission that we have is concerned. So Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, because this is very personal to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we feel exactly the same way. It was definitely need to come back for a follow-up with everything you guys have got going on there. But I think once people see the film, they hear the full story, see where everything happened, and then what we got on top of it. I think if there's anyone on the fence before then, they may be pushed on over after, especially once they see everything. But we want to thank you guys as well. And then I'm going to do the final segment here, the No One Cares report, or the the whimsical rantings. But it kind of goes into the vein of this, because I named this Not My Problem. And it goes like this. Fear is not something we can escape. Admitting your fears is the first step to overcoming them. Sounds cliche, I know, but that's just to state that saying I don't care what people think is viewed as coming from a fearless sensibility. But more often than not, it's pride and ego that flaunts that notion. Is it not more virtuous to fear ridicule, to care how people perceive you, and still have the courage to put yourself, your stories, and ideas out there for all to see anyway? Of course, as humans, we tend to run on those emotions, so it's easier said than done. But it's still worth noting that there's no courage or sacrifice in not caring what people think. And possessing the humility to recognize and understand that doesn't make anyone better than anybody else. No one doing anything of note in this subject is walking on water, but it's still good to know where the stumps are. There are hidden things, beings out in the world that are getting help staying hidden. Whether it's for them or us, I don't know, but I really don't think Sasquatch has anything to worry about when it comes to us hurting them. We can't even catch them on camera good enough to show most people they should pay closer attention to the woods. But for our or their protection is not a good enough reason to me. We're so well protected, but shouldn't we know from who or what the walls are protecting us? We're trying to expose just one of those things, and we hamstring our own efforts to do it. The subject is so full of commercial indoctrination, things we accept, that when and if the truth does come out, the waters have been so muddied with different beliefs and assumptions that I believe it will take a long time to flesh out the actual truth. We need to recognize that there is an enemy within and do our part to lessen the novel effect the very mention of the creature seems to invoke. We need to start looking to ourselves as being someone who's responsible for helping. When it comes to Sasquatch or Bigfoot, as we know them, a very wide net is cast. There are as many theories as there are interests in this subject. It's on us to do our part. However you see your part in this, if you care at all, you have one to play. Thanks again, Pam and Paul, for coming on here and talking about your experiences. We appreciate you guys very much. Y'all leave us a comment. Hit that, smash that thumbs up button, please. Or, like the smash button if you'd like. This button, that's a bad button. Stay away from that one. But the red one that says subscribe and the other thumbs up, we appreciate that. And leave us a comment. We appreciate you very much. Thanks again, Pam and Paul.
We appreciate
Mark.
you. Thank
Absolutely.
You, Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks, Paul.
Thank
Really.
you.
Good to see you guys again. And we'll be in touch. You guys are going to be seeing their film hopefully within the month. We'll have them all done. But thanks again, everybody, for joining us here tonight. I had a little over 800 in. So not a bad night for us, for sure.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Y'all take care.